Hi, welcome to the In Retrospect KE podcast, where marriage meets knowledge. Hi, my name is Beverly Chogo, and with me is,
Arthur Muriuki.
and we are so excited to be having you on our very first episode of the In Retrospect podcast, where marriage meets knowledge. So, for this first conversation, I'd like to loop in the audience on a conversation that we once had at your office, where you gave such a bold and risky statement. You said that we are more equipped to marry our parents. If you're a female, you're more equipped to marry your dad than we are to marry our spouses or the people who we chose. Why did you say that? And where did that come from?
It's true, and I'll repeat it again.
Yes.
As adults, we are more equipped to marry our own parents than we are to another of the opposite sex. And the reason I say that is because growing up, the experiences that we go through, our conversations, how we resolve conflict, our perceptions of cause and effect, how we experience love, how we experience shame, how we experience feedback, either positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, how we are encouraged, how we are supported. All that experience of the human soft experience of life, our first mirror is the person that brought us up. So it could be a mom, a dad, a grandma, an auntie, an uncle, an adopted family. So those individuals that we grow up around create the framework for how we perceive the world around us. So that if you say you love me, what is my experience of that word love from where I come from? Is it gifts? Is it money? Is it accolades? And then if you tell me you love me, but I'm not receiving that kind of affection or love based on how I expect to receive it, then it won't be enough. So I'll still push and yarn and drive out. But when it's said by the people from my family who I came from, I'll understand. Like, for example, my mother would never say I love you. But if she thinks she needs to express it, she'll ask me, even now at my age, she'll ask me, do you need money? So I know she's saying, so I've learned to stop and say, no, I don't need money, but tell me why you want to say you love me. Well, we are still working on that.
How do you think that affects our marriages?
It's devastating because when I say I'm best equipped to marry my mother, or you're best equipped to marry your dad, it sounds incestuous. Like
It does.
It's incest.
Like, let me even just interrupt you there. We were having this conversation with my husband this week and asked him, what do you think of that statement? And he said, it's true. And then
He agreed.
I even asked him, do you think I'm like your mom?
What did he say? Or should we have him on the podcast?
We should. But whatever he said affirmed your statement.
Yes, and it's true. Now, outside of the first impact of it, we are talking about incest. The behind the scenes explanation of that is, there's a question you had asked.
How does it affect
marriage? Yes. So I come now as an adult, I come into a relationship with you, I start dating you, but then my expression of my love towards you is based on what was modeled before. Now, of course, we'll discuss for those who grew up with a single parent home versus those who grew up in a joint parent home. That if I grew up, for me, as a single parent home with my mom buying me gifts when I have done well, promising to do nice things for me, but then she's still cooking and cleaning for me and doing all those things. Cooking and cleaning will not appear as a love language between me and her, but those things that she does that are personal for me as her son, that gets hardwired to me to mean when my mom does such things for me, then it means she's very proud of me. She's cheering me on. She believes I've done an exceptionally good thing. She's expressing how my good actions or the things that I've done have made her feel proud of me. So that is the framework of love that I have. Then I get married and I meet a woman who's been raised from a different perspective. Like, for example, if where she came from is expression of love was a verbal expression. I'm very proud of you, my daughter. You've made me very proud. You're awesome. I think all these nice things that fathers would are needed to say to their children. But I never got that. So I don't learn how to express it. So no matter how many gifts I buy her as my expression of love, she will never experience it as love because I never spoke love. I expressed it through actions. I never spoke it. And it will always be in conversations later, you'll hear in conflict, she might say, you don't love me or you've never loved me. And then that's when now the conflict begins. So it's a devastating, sometimes it can have a devastating effect, especially if it's not discussed up front. What would I need to do for you or with you or to you for you to feel that I actually genuinely love you? Not to just hear it, but to feel it. And then in the same way, you need to also be open that how I would expect the things that I expect you to say or do, etc., for me to feel loved, is something that you could consider for this marriage. There is also an option that is different from your expression of love.
Is this the same as love languages? Is that where love languages come from?
I think so, because I think even from the definition of that word is how love is expressed as a language. So yes, it could be seen to mean love language.
Okay. So when we're talking about love language, and it has been a big conversation on love languages, there's a guy called Stanley Mukolwe. We were attending a marriage seminar at our church recently. And he says that behind a love language, there's a need that's not being met. Or, so for example, it's meeting a need that was not met when we were young, right? So for example, if your love language is words of affirmation, perhaps you are not getting this. And so now it's something that you are wired to desire, but you are not getting it. And so now your love language becomes words of affirmation because there's a need there that was not met. Or the other example he gave of maybe if it's gifts, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, he was saying that if you grew up in a homestead where gifts were not given, or you were the middle child and you used to get me hand-me-downs. So gifts mean such an important thing for you. And now when you're able to have these things, then it confirms love or something like that. How different is what you're saying from that?
I think two sides of the same coin. Because if love was well expressed towards me growing up, then it forms a framework for how I would want to continue perpetuating it.
Right.
If love was not very well expressed for me growing up, it means there are gaps. It's not clear. But then along the way, as I mature and my brain develops, I'll want to fill in those gaps with how now I would want it expressed. So for example, if I determine for myself that flowers, my experience of flowers makes me feel very excited, makes me feel beautiful, makes me feel loved, cared for, thought about. So then it would be a good idea to express it to your partner that if you buy me flowers, it's going to make me feel really good. As opposed to, why is it that you never buy me flowers? So now you're accusing me that I never from the beginning, I never thought you buy me flowers. I had a lady once say that when the boyfriend brought her flowers, she said, how much does this cost? Do you know how much food this would have bought for a day? Why would you buy flowers? What are we going to do with these flowers? So you see, it's good gestures that are not well received because there was no conversation of this is how I'd like to be loved. Okay. So when now I'm beginning to develop, I'm noticing another person, and I'm noticing how I'm feeling, and my body is responding to the attention, to the affection that I'm getting, and it feels nice. So if this is my first experience of love expressed, and if I have no prior experience of it, then chances are the first person who gives me that experience begins to form my expectation. My first boyfriend would express love to me, and he was awesome. He would buy me flowers, he would take me on dates, he would buy me ice cream, he would hold my hand in public. It begins to be, this feels nice, I've not felt it before. I want to hang here longer. But then as I'm continuing to date and that relationship ends and I get into another and I'm maturing and I'm beginning to experience different people in relationships, then if I'm open to allowing my experiences to evolve with me, then I'm safe. If I'm not, then I begin, that compensation now continues to increase, so that my next boyfriend will have to be weighed based on my previous boyfriend. So if that gap is not met along the way now as an adult, with a conscious decision that this is how now as an adult I want to be loved, it will stagnate you to the same place. So hopefully this is conversations that people are able to have before they get offended that you're not loving me the way I need to be. And hopefully that is something that can be resolved before it becomes, I don't love you anymore.
Okay. Question there. Is this the same concept or narrative that we marry our fathers for a girl and they marry their mothers? But the question here is, if you've grown up in a single parent home, like for example me, I have not had the model of what a father looks like or what fatherly love looks like. How does that impact how I look or how I settled for my husband or how I was looking for somebody to spend my life with?
So that's a two-pronged approach to, there's a two-pronged approach to that question. You had asked how growing up without one parent, a father.
Yeah, so for example, me as a girl, girls are usually said to look for, subconsciously or subconsciously, they look for their fathers in their spouses or in their potential spouses. First of all, do you think we look for that subconsciously?
So let's look at you as a good case study.
Yes.
Is there any physical resemblance between your husband and your dad?
Other than skin tone, no.
Beard, height,
No.
weight?
Wait. Yeah, they're both skinny.
Voice tone,
No.
demeanor, how he listens to you, how he talks to you.
But you see, that's with the assumption that I've had a relationship with my father. There are people who haven't even met their father.
So you see, with the first part, you've said there is minimal physical similarity.
Yeah.
That you were not initially attracted to him because he looks like your dad.
Sorry, say that
You were
again.
not initially attracted to him because physically.
I was not.
Were you? I'm making an assumption. Were you?
That was an assumption.
Were you?
No.
No, good. So my assumption was correct. So
It wasn't even a factor. Let me say that. It wasn't even a factor.
do you think now there's something else that is similar to that is similar about the two of them that is not physical?
Very different men.
You are 100% sure with a lot of certainty that your husband and your dad are men apart?
As far as I know, yes.
So there is no way you fit within the category of they've married someone similar to the dad.
Hey, mbali sana.
So in which ways are they different?
Now we are getting but here's the thing, Arthur. Let's talk about mtu ajui baba yake. Because I can answer that question, right? However, I do not have good memory of my father, right? At the moment, I do not have good memory of my father. Having experienced and living with him and how he fathered me, right? So the memory that I have of him is very, very different, even though we do speak now, but we don't speak from a relationship point of view. Make sense? So, but if you were to remove the lens away from me, maybe there's somebody who's watching and they've never met their father. There's a woman who has never met their father, but they're married.
Yeah.
So, how would you say that it informed the men that they are settling, the man that they have settled for, but also, I want to turn it on you.
Flip it.
How is your wife similar to your mom?
In a lot of ways.
That's interesting. We are coming back to that. Let's go back to the other one, to the one who has never met their dad.
So if you've never met your dad and you're female or male, either way, let's maybe start with female, is that if you had lived with your dad, what would have been an experience or your presumed experience of that person? That a father figure represents what? So that now that you didn't get it, there's something you're losing. So, as expected, for most fathers tend to be a symbol of safety,
Yeah.
presence,
Yeah.
security, consistency, authority, love, like all these things that you need to feel safe and to have a stable sense of being,
Yeah.
and support you or guide you in a direction that you discover who you are and you find your place in society and you execute your full potential. Best case scenario, that is what a father would do. Now,
So we make up an idea of who a father should be.
yes, so if we've not lived it, there's no harm. And let me just demolish this myth that if you're never raised by your father or your mother, there's something wrong with you. Human brains are exceptionally awesome. That they are able to compensate and develop capacities even when these are not modeled.
Okay.
That you're able to create for yourself an environment that is safe and beautiful for yourself, even
Okay.
if another did not help you create.
Right.
That you have creative capacity to do that. So in the absence of an adult, a parent to model what a father should be or a mother should be, there are gaps in emotional growth that pop in once in a while. And some of it is, what are your expectations of what a man is in your life in a romantic way? Because beyond the romance, there is why you want to get married. Because then if it was just romance, there was no need for the permanence of it with a single person.
Right.
Then if romance was a motivating factor, then you can have different experiences of romance continually without any limit. But then there has to be an underlying motivation to get married. And for some, it's financial stability. For others, it's to have children in a Christian family. For others, in a marriage setup, for others is because they don't want to be alone and they want to have someone consistently for the rest of their life. And others is out of fear that they don't want to grow old alone. Others, they marry because I'm growing old and society is now pushing a demand on me to get married. That no matter how different, how far you went deviating from how your parents looks like to find your spouse, you end up having the same exact spouse that you didn't want. And not because she turned out like that, but it is what she must become to be able to cope living with you. Because you are raised by parents who are like you now.
So going to what is familiar it is a good thing for the brain. But why is it that we struggle to move past what is familiar to the uncharted territories when it comes to looking for a mate or a spouse?
And I think that question also answers why the biggest challenge we face in therapy to move someone from what they're used to them determining that they need to create what is working for them. Because when you're being brought up, when you're being raised by the primary caregivers around you, what they equipped you with was good and exceptionally good, or otherwise, but let's say it was good because you survived it, and it was only needed for you to survive childhood. So if the parenting style was only geared towards you surviving childhood, so finish your food, do your homework, fighting, breaking up fights, giving you rules of don'ts. And that was good for you to safeguard your safety or whatever other fears your parents had. But then we grow up and we apply the same parenting that was given on us as adults, and we are no longer children. So we are least equipped based on our parenting to survive the adult world. Because you are never equipped as a child how to love another in a romantic way. You are never equipped on how to respond to another in a romantic way, how to resolve conflict with your partner. It was always you being, and this is where I'm losing my thought, and I'll continue. It was your parents parented you, one, based on their fears, or based on the expectations of how I want my child to be, or I don't want to raise up my children the way I was raised. Then you become this adult and you want to start your own life, you want to start your own family, and you go back into your toolkit for how to interact with the adult world, and you discover it's empty. Because you're fully equipped to survive as a child. And that is the same equipment that you carry now as a parent. Okay? Because
as a spouse or as a parent?
As a parent to your children. You only transfer toolkit from what you're given, you give it to your children. So there's a gap of now, how do I cope with my partner, and I don't have a toolbox for that. So it becomes the biggest challenge for therapy, because the brain does not want to go against what is familiar, because what is familiar is safe. So the biggest challenge normally is, this is what you're used to, it's not working anymore. You are unhappy, you're pissed off, you're moody, it's now causing a psychiatric condition. And no one is coming to save you now. Your parents are not coming to mother you or to cuddle you now as an adult. You have to figure this out on your own. And you come to us, we're pushing you to look at what is not working and to let you know that you can actually create what you want to work. But you see, now that means you're creating new neural pathways, you're creating new connections, you're trying to develop connections in part of your brain that has been dormant for quite a while. And it's scary. Remember the first time you learned how to ride do you know how to ride a bicycle? I was about to make an assumption. I've stopped myself before I completed. Do you know how to ride a bicycle?
I don't.
Are you curious about riding a bicycle?
No.
Why?
I just feel like nilipitwa na wakati. Let me tell you an interesting story. I'm learning how to swim. Let me digress a little bit. I'm learning how to swim, and then a very interesting brother of mine, I told him I'm learning to swim, and he's like, "Why didn't you learn this when you were a child? Why are you doing that now?" And I was like, well, that's the assumption that I had access to a swimming pool when I was a child. But now here I am, I'm learning. But yeah, it's the assumption that you're making that I should know how to ride a bike, I should know how to swim.
And you've thrown a new assumption to me that people who swam as kids were the only ones who had a swimming pool and access to a swimming pool.
No, they had access, whether theirs or in a school or whatever. But
everyone who learned to swim as a child,
where else would they have learned?
I attempted in a river growing up.
Now that's a different.
And a lot of children in the village have never seen a swimming pool, and they cannot drown.
My mindset is urban. That's because that's what I know. That's what's familiar for my brain. Back to our conversation.
Okay. So let's use swimming as an example. The first time you went into the water and you attempted to float, what was your experience of that?
I was scared.
Why? The water was not going to do anything to you. How far were you going to be carried by the water?
We've had people die in the swimming pool, so.
So fear stopped you from learning on that day, because you said you're still learning. How much time has passed?
Well, it's been 4 lessons.
So 4 lessons of how long each?
An hour.
So 1 hour was not enough. You needed a second, a third, and now fourth, and you still have more hours lined up for you to learn how to
Has
swim.
anyone ever learned how to swim in one lesson?
Now, do you remember how you? Yes, some self-teach. Others learn actually at the point of drowning. They figure out how to beat the water, and they come out. And later on, the fear for the water goes, and they come back in. And if you're one of them, say raise your hand in the comments. So what I'm trying to say is that the fear, one fear stops us from attempting something new, because we don't have the emotional framework to deal with that kind of experience, the fear of the unknown. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What kind of feedback will I get from people? What memories will they bring up of the people when I was a child who would be on my case if I failed, disappointed, and the shouting and screaming? So whatever is risky or scary or not guaranteed or is projected to be unsafe for the brain will hesitate. Now, just because the brain will hesitate to get excited about it, it doesn't mean that you cannot override it. We have a very nice switch in the human person. Do you know what that switch is? To help override your brain. You can guess.
What?
So tune into the next episode and then you'll find out. So that switch is willpower. How bad do I want this?
You should have said that. You should have said it starts with a W.
So how much do I want to attempt this? For example, how important is swimming to you right now? If there was a way, if you didn't have to learn how to swim, would you still pursue it? Like if there was no need whatsoever for you to learn, if it was not a skill that was going, if you had no access to a swimming, or you were in a country where there was no swimming pools, because for you have to learn in a swimming pool. There were no swimming pools. Would you still want to learn how to swim?
Highly unlikely.
So you're learning how to swim for the sake of the pool. So you see right there is why it becomes difficult for you to attempt it, to continue to learn at a faster rate, because the brain is looking at, if this is good for me, how fast can I learn it so that if I was ever in danger, I can use it.
You're right.
But you see, for you, it has not been marked as an essential skill for your survival. It's a leisure thing on a Sunday afternoon.
Right.
This is a huge assumption, or a Monday morning. So until it becomes a necessary skill for you, for example, like learning how to drive, for most people is a necessary skill because they want to buy a car and they do not want to hire a driver. So until your brain separates what is important right now and what is vital for your survival, continuous enjoyment of life, it becomes a useless endeavor. So for you, and you can test these and come back in our next episode and tell us, if you're to make this a life and death situation, prime your brain to think this is a life and death situation, that I must learn how to swim today on my 5th lesson. The 5th lesson is it for me, I must learn. You'll be shocked at how easy it will be for you to learn swimming on your 5th lesson.
Do you think so?
Yes. And then the amount of, is it paid? Are they paid lessons?
Paid.
And then we can also talk about how else you can make use of that money that would have been for consultation. So that is why we fight, the brain will fight us every time we attempt to learn something new. But if we persist and we're consistent and motivated and have determined upfront that this is good for me because I want to do it, not because I'm being forced to do it, it becomes an easy thing. So that if I don't want to be like the kind of man my father was, it's not going to happen automatically.
Right.
Because your emotional reactions, your perception of other people is going to be exactly like your father, because that's what you saw. So the people who are going to be around you will be people who have to live with that kind of a person that you are. So to get out of that, it has to be a personal decision, consistent, conscious decision that I do not ever want to be a man like my father. So if anyone says something that is similar to what my dad was that I didn't like, I make conscious effort to remedy the situation. If it's a relationship, to repair. If it's an offense, to apologize and to mean it. And to be clear that I'm consciously avoiding these experiences. Failure to do that, you will end up with your father in your 60s, If he was drinking beer, you're drinking beer together. If you're smoking, you're smoking. If he was abusing other adults in that home, you're doing the same thing, because that is what is familiar to your brain, and you never actively created new experiences for your brain and created safety so that the brain can pursue it. So it's not just, I don't want to be like my dad. Well, then there's work to do. And therapy is a good idea.
Agreed. So it takes, I feel like it takes a very conscious effort
Yes.
and even awareness that I don't want to be like my dad in this 1, 2, 3, 4 ways, and putting in the work for people to do that. So if you've grown up and maybe there's certain traits that you've picked up from your father, and you're not even aware that you are like your father, and these traits are perhaps negatively impacting your marriage, how can you become aware of these things? And could you give an example of, from your experience and what you've seen with your patients or the people who you've seen, that are some of the things which they probably picked up growing up, they've seen it being modeled, and now it's affecting their marriage, but they have no awareness that this is something I've seen growing up and I'm replicating the same thing, and I don't even know where the problem is.
So, and I'll pull you into this one because I
I'm
want
scared.
So a lot of men who complain about some of the problems in their marriages, I come home and there's no food. There's nothing to eat. Like my wife has been in the house the whole day and she tells me she's eaten, so I should come with food. Like I should buy takeout for myself. Or I come home and when I get home is when she's cooking and it's already late, I'm tired, I want to sleep. And to her, it's not a big deal. That if I was hungry, I could have come earlier, we cooked together, or I could have eaten somewhere and then come home. So it's unspoken expectations that we react towards. So and when you ask the spouse who's with this person, the question is, what do you mean? I'm not your slave. Like it's marriage is, we are equal.
Yeah.
If I'm not in the mood to cook, it's your stomach. You cook and you eat.
And especially if the argument is, but we are both working.
Yes.
You
And
have your job, I have my job. Do you think your job is more important than mine, that I have to get from my job and come and cook?
yes.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what he said, especially by the females
Yes.
who are affected by these issues.
Yeah.
Is that I'm expected to be a mother, I'm expected to be a spouse, I'm expected to take the children to hospital, all these expectations, and you just come home at 10, 11, your demand for food, you don't want to come in early enough and find out what the kids did, and yet I'm supposed to keep quiet and execute my responsibilities.
And submit.
And the man will say, but I pay all the big bills. What's the issue? Okay? But then the man has been modeled growing up that the man pays the big bills and then sits to be served. Okay? And if your spouse, if your wife did not grow up in that environment where he saw the father being served because he paid the big bills, he saw the father cooking with the mom, taking care of the mom, doing dishes or cleaning the house, and it was never an issue for him, then this wife will be at a loss to explain what's wrong with you. It doesn't take anything from you to do those things.
Right.
But you see, to the man, it's unheard of that I will come from work and come cut onions with you. Like, what am I modeling for the boys? Okay, so until, and that's why I said therapy sometimes helps, because we ask some tough questions. Is there a different way of looking at it, and so very many other questions to get a man to introspect. To introspect. What is it that is causing offense on me? That why is it that it's offensive to me to
Right.
clean dishes that I've used? And then remember, when I was a bachelor, my wife never used to clean because I didn't know her. I used to do my own dishes. So, but then
Sorry to interject there. Recently I was hearing a pastor said that Adam was eating before Eve came along. the biblical
Do we know
context.
that?
Was how was he surviving?
I did not read anywhere God say, and I created a stomach for Adam, and I told.
But then, hey, we are going in a. But the point, this is the point. That example you've given is, I feel like it's men of the previous generation, right? The older generation, maybe. But the men in my generation, I don't know if it's the same generation as yours.
We'll find out.
As yours. But men of this generation now are more receptive. And the domestic roles, the lines of domestic roles have been sort of blurred, right? So, with that in mind, give an example of how, if we were to forget the domestic roles example, what is a potential trauma, quote unquote, of having grown up that could be having an implication on the marriages now of people of our time?
Now, if we are talking about trauma, then we need to define trauma outside of the context of negative pain or pain that was inflicted on us either through abuse, be it physical, sexual, emotional, financial, but to an experience that was accepted as normal growing up, but that experience now denies us the capacity to live fully because it is no longer, we cannot, it stops us from adapting to this age now. Okay, so trauma to mean it hinders our adaptation now and our growth and our excellence now. Okay,
I like that definition.
yes, it could be a trauma, for example, that was based on communication in the home. That the man would come in and your father will come in, and those days physical newspaper, seated going through the day's news, and then the mother probably was a housewife and is in the kitchen throughout, cleaning, bathing the children, cooking. And then this man grows up, goes to maybe countries out of the country to study, or stays here and is exposed to a female that never experienced that from the father. That the father would come home and is excited about playing with the children, but asking how they are, asking who has a boyfriend, who has a girlfriend. And this man's father would never entertain, I am paying fees for you to study, not to go start playing with girls. Where communication, where it was on very rare occasions that the man's voice would be heard. And the man's voice would be heard when there was chaos or conflict or punishment or something severe enough to require his attention. Okay? Every other thing was resolved by the mother. Then he comes to this marriage where the wife expects full engagement of the husband. The husband is wondering, why is it that you expect all these things from me? My father, why is it not enough that I'm doing all these things? You do all the other things. Why do I need to know that my daughter needs pads, that I need to go buy sanitary pads for my daughter? That is your job. Why do I need to change a diaper? Those are things of women, okay? And it becomes a bit difficult. And conversations now, outside of domestic issues, that when you are now in the house with your wife expects conversation, wants to connect beyond the responsibilities. But you're very comfortable in silence. You're very comfortable waiting to be served food. You eat, you go sleep in silence. The children are in the home and they want to play with you, then they go play with your mother. Oh, mom, huyu alikuwa ananiambia, anamwambia mama yako.
Arthur, do you think those are men of our generation?
Yes. And it's not about them being men of our generation alone. It's men who are stuck in the previous generation that are struggling now to adapt to this generation because they were not fully equipped to this generation. And we cannot fault their parents because the parents also had a similar experience of their parents. But now with the exposure that they're getting and the experiences, now we are able to help move with movement that these two people can now develop skills to cope in this marriage. Because if you never had your father speak in the house until it was something significant to warrant his attention, that will make you miserable in your marriage. Because everything in your marriage is significant to warrant your attention. But you're going to detach from it and lose your family because they want you present, because this family was not raised by your father. This family want a father who's present. And if that was not given to you, you better learn how to be present. Because your family cannot be punished because of the sins of your fathers, the fathers who came before them.
Okay. I don't know if I live under a rock, but my experience of the men around me, and especially those who have been married, like the couples around me, the kind of examples you're giving, I completely agree that they would be that would be so relevant for somebody who's like 45, right? Such example.
Yes.
But I feel like this generation, my age, I think the issues are slightly different.
It's true. But then maybe you'll tell me. The assumption is that they have consciously moved beyond that.
Yeah.
Because then they were raised by parents who come from a different age, who have grandparents from another era. Okay? So if there was a struggle, I don't know where this is where we need to introduce transgenerational issues. If there was a struggle at some point that was not resolved, that struggle continues to be affected to this era. Okay?
Give an example.
So for example, if I came from a family that if you piss off, now what example can I use that is appropriate for this generation? Dressing. That you grew up, your great grandparents or your parents grew up telling you this is how you need to dress. This is how.
You've said grandparents.
Parents, your
Okay.
parents grew up telling you this is what is decent. Do not dress like this in front of people. And then now in this generation, people have the awareness, sense of awareness and choice to dress in what is, the driving force is what's comfortable for me first before it becomes acceptable by you. Okay? So if I choose what I want to wear that is comfortable and I'm interacting with other people, the first question is, who's his mother or her mother? Okay? Who raised you? And you see, this generation now struggles with, why is it an issue for you or to you how I dress, yet this is my body? Okay? So it becomes a conflict. Now, when it comes into the dating scene, the question now becomes, what kind of a person am I going to take home? Okay? And there was a marriage that actually broke up because because a mother-in-law somewhere decided this girl does not know how to dress decently, so she's bad, and she was very influential and powerful in that home, that her word goes. And that marriage ended on the basis of your wife is not a decent dresser. And decent, according to this lady, was based on her perception of what decent is. And when you engage with this lady, it's not her own perception, it's her parents' perception of what decent is. Because in another place, it was discovered that she admires the confidence of the young ladies these days and how confident they are in dressing in whatever they would want to dress in. But in her age, she couldn't do that. Basically, now it costed the son's marriage because it did not agree with what was good and right for her.
But Arthur.
Tumeambiwa tukate.
Yeah, as we are ending that conversation, I'm very, I don't know what the word is, but if a mother can have that kind of influence on the son, on who they marry, and especially on the basis of decency in terms of dressing, this is a risky statement, but I wonder what kind of a man that is. But you seem to have a response.
Let me come to the rescue of men. Of course, it does not make sense to you that a man cannot are you about to say could not stand up to the mother? And
Yeah.
now look at the dynamic of this relationship. The man knows he can never marry his mother. He has to marry someone else other than the mother. He knows he can never be in love with the mother. He has to be in love. He would hopefully prefer to be in love with another who's just for him. But there's this huge obstacle standing in between. And it's not just a physical mother obstacle. It's also an emotional, psychological, it's a mental block that he cannot navigate. Now, the hope is that the partner would be able to support the navigation through these. But a lot of women would say what you've said, what kind of a man are you? Now that doesn't sound very comforting and supportive because...
It doesn't. I'm even thinking perhaps the wife was rescued. This woman was rescued from this man, because if the mother would have such kind of influence now,
it shows you...
Sembuse.
Yes. Later on,
In marriage,
on the type of
yes.
children, how many boys, how many girls.
Even before the children come, where you invest, where you do what,
Yes.
where you live,
Yes.
where you do what.
Now imagine the amount of work that would need to go, not just for the man, but also for the woman, to adapt with the changing perception of this man as he's going through his own self-discovery and introspection into becoming a better, more equipped man for his wife and less equipped man for the mother.
Hey, but in such an event where the mother is very influential,
Yes.
and in my opinion, could be a wrong opinion, is that the man is sort of unable to stand up for himself. But you've said that in such a case, this spouse should be supportive enough and patient as this man navigates him discovering himself. That statement has an underlying assumption that this man is willing to even do some self-discovery. But also, where does the wife get this kind of patience?
That's a good question. Now, even if we were to give it a Christian perspective, when the woman is referenced as helper. So let me ask you, if I needed to lift this couch, which is quite heavy because I have attempted, would I have asked a 5-year-old to help me lift it?
No,
Why not?
they do not have the capacity.
What capacity are they lacking?
Physical.
Strength, they're not strong. Okay. If I didn't want to lift, so who would I ask to help me lift this couch?
Somebody of equal strength or more.
Okay. So if I wanted to do less work, but still move the couch to wherever I want it to be, what kind of a person would I look for? If I needed to use less strength?
Somebody who's
stronger than me,
Stronger
way
than you.
stronger than me.
Yeah.
Okay, so they can even lift for me.
Yeah.
But then because I don't want to appear like I'm a bad person, I'll pretend to be lifting.
Yeah.
So the word help means that this person you're seeking help from is better. Better to mean he has something, a capacity that is greater than you, or is equipped with skills that you lack, because then if you did, then you don't need this person's help. Okay? So help, let me even make it more personal. What was your worst subject in high school? Like subject you disliked even the teacher coming to teach? Mathematics. Did you ever get anyone to show you how to do math in class?
Yeah.
What kind of a person did you go for? The guy who was getting same marks as you, or? So who did you go for?
The guy who the math teacher loved.
Who was scoring what?
Performing well.
Okay, so a better performer.
Yeah.
So why would you go for that one? All of you in class
They have.
being taught by the same teacher. Why would you go for that one?
They seem to grasp these concepts better and faster.
So was it an assumption, or it was an actual lived experience? So this person is better. So did they mean they were smarter than you? Like they were more of a genius than bevies. They are greater human than you.
In that aspect, yes.
What about
not greater human, but in the aspect of being smarter, yes.
So in specific abilities, are there subjects that you're better than this person who was best in math? Which one?
I was good in English.
And how did that person perform in English comparatively to you?
Not as good.
Okay. So when it came to English, you were better.
Yeah.
So in math tests, or when it was something that needed to be done mathematically, and if the two of you were good friends, then you knew you could rely on this person to teach you how to do it and to support you get better, learn how to do these equations. Mm-hmm. When it came to English, they knew if the two of you are good friends, they could count on you to help them figure out how do you do these in English. So in math, this person helped you. In English, this person helped you. Not because one of you was a genius, greater genius, or a better person than the other, but there were capacities that they had that were better developed than yours. And there were capacities that you had that were better developed than that person. So the two of you would help each other.
Yeah, right.
So in the genius of God, he referenced the woman as a helper to man. Okay? Let me create a helper meet for him. But to Adam, he didn't say that, let me create Adam to help as a helper for Eve. Okay? After he saw man, he said, let me create a helper meet for him. So in every form, and feel free to express your opinion on how you feel about this title of helper. Because where I see it, helper means that there are things that, as a wife to me, that I acknowledge that you're exceptionally good at, that probably I need to learn how to do them, and that in the most part, there are deficiencies that I am compensating, that probably with your help, you'll be able to help me. But then look at what happens in marriage. Why should you help me? I've done nothing to deserve it. Okay? That for most people who are conflicting in marriage, that for example, if you know I cannot stand up to my mom and say, Mom, no, here and not any further, do not enter into my marriage, the wife will be more accused, why can't you stand up against my mom? But then if I could do that, I wouldn't need you. I wouldn't need your help. So then how do you approach that issue? If the goal is to stay together and not use that as a reason to leave, then what is it that your husband is lacking that you've noticed is an issue that you're better equipped at handling, that you can help him figure out how to do? And would the man again be willing to allow you to do that?
That's another question.
So you are fully equipped to help me be able to stand up against my mom, but do I want to allow you to do that?
Right.
Okay.
Good question.
So if I would allow myself to do that, and that I trust you not to disrespect her, because that's my biggest fear, I don't want to disrespect mom. That if I trust you not to disrespect her, but to help me figure out how to do this safely, remember my brain is seeking safety, then I also want to be able to move away from her and cleave to you. But then how?
Is that a real need that most men have?
Yes. If on the weighing scale, losing you is more devastating to me than standing up to my mother, I will switch sides. But if losing you is acceptable or is a lesser evil to me than standing up to my mom, then we have a lot more work to do. So both have to get into this synergy where I know, I accept I need help, and I choose you to help me do this. And that you're not fighting me. You actually enter into your helper mode and you help me resolve this issue. Because it's a deficiency that you've noticed. And poor me with my deficiencies, I'll never be able to do it on my own. And my resistance to allow you to come in to help me is part of that deficiency. So the home has to be so safe for my brain to feel, yeah, now I need to detach here. This is safer for longer. And that comes in a lot of work for you.
For me?
Keyword, two.
I'm like, why me? But you've brought such an important aspect to living and cleaving from a biblical angle. When a man is told, and a man shall leave his mother and father and cleave to the wife, is it not interesting that it's not women who are told to leave, but it's men who are told to leave? That's a question that maybe we can talk about in the next episode. I hope you have found this to be interesting. I hope you've learned something more importantly. Arthur, I don't know if, based on our conversation, could you give our audience something to think around when it comes to this issue of living and claiming? We'll talk about it in the future. But like in terms of what we saw growing up, and how it's affecting our marriage now.
So a question to retrospect on.
In retrospect.
Yes. If you had a good relationship with your dad and you are in every way want to be like your dad when you grow up, if you think your dad is the coolest man on earth that you would in every way want to be like him,